My name is Rahul Sonnad, and I'm co-founder and CEO of Tesloop. So I'm going to tell you about what is happening in the mobility space that we've learned over the last almost 3 years running on the Tesla platform. And we think it's really exciting because it's probably the biggest change in the automotive industry for a long time. So today, when you look at mobility, we feel it's really irrational, like whether you're buying a car or using other services like rental car companies, rideshare, what have you. It's very inefficient because cars generally are only used about 5% of the time, and they're not connected, which makes it very hard to administer. So you end up with kind of a mishmash of things with no logical relations. And what has happened in the last few years is Tesla has released their cars, and we really think of them as a vehicle platform, and really the first digital vehicle platform. And to us, to be a digital vehicle platform, you need 4 things. You need to have electric cars, because they're much cheaper to run, almost 3 times the cost. You need a lot of charging. You want connectivity so you can monitor and control the cars everywhere. And then lastly, you want increasing autonomy, which makes it easier to drive and safer to drive. Today, this is 300,000 cars, and we think in about 3 years, this will be 10 million cars. So what we have done at Tesloop is we have built a mobility service. Think of it as a long-distance ride-share service that we launched 2.5 years ago. And you can book a seat kind of like you'd use a train from LA to San Diego. We do 8 daily round trips, or to Palm Springs, or Palm Springs to Vegas. And we just try to make it really nice. We try to give you almost everything you have in the Starbucks except bathrooms, and if you need to go to the bathroom, we take you to Starbucks. So it's just a really pleasant ride for a very reasonable price of $29 to $69 to San Diego. And we found that this has gotten really strong reviews by the passengers because it's a much more pleasant way to travel. And it's also more convenient because, with the train, you end up in downtown LA, and if you're on the west side, that's a bit of a hassle. So it's a little more flexible than kind of other options. And what we've really been doing is driving these cars in extreme amounts. So if you do 2 round trips to San Diego every day, that ends up being 17,000 miles a month. So we do that with every car, whether it's Palm Springs or San Diego or Orange County or to Vegas. And that enables us to make about $17,000 per car per month, which, like when you compare it with Hertz, they're making about $1,000, or Enterprise is making $1,500. So it's a pretty big multiple of those. And the key factors to make all of this work are, first, the electric drivetrain. And this is really, we think, somewhat underappreciated, where some people think it's a little bit more efficient. But in reality, if you look at the depreciation of the car, the fuel, and the maintenance, this is about a 3x lower cost than any gas car. And then the next thing you need is a lot of charging, because if you want to keep the cars running, you need to be able to charge them. You need to be able to charge them quickly. And Tesla is in the process of doing one of the biggest industrial build-outs in history, of really spending billions of dollars on a global network of superchargers. And in California, both northern and southern, it's the most density of both cars and charging. The red is what you have today. The gray is what you're going to get by the end of the year. And it's really just going to explode the number of places where you can charge cars, which means the flexibility of where you can go in this model is going to drastically increase. And then the real, we think, magic happens with the data feeds. I think in the industry, a lot of people are really fixated on driverless cars, and they feel like driverless is going to be this nirvana where everything will be great in cars. But what you really need is the ability to remotely control the cars and track them, to unlock them. If you have autonomy without that, it's not useful because nobody can get in the car and you can't tell it where to go. So often people conflate those two. But of the two, we think autonomy becomes very commoditized, where there'll be several technologies that let the cars drive effectively by themselves, maybe in 3, 4, 5 years. The data feed, though, is going to become the central economic marketplace for mobility moving forward. And so what we're doing at Tesloop is we're building open source software that lets you grab all the cars, and we do like 4 times a second, 60 data points. This is, you know, all the things you'd expect: the speed, the location, the tire pressure, the, you know, state of everything, the door locks, which doors are open. All of that we can grab, and we put it onto a bus that now doesn't live on the car but comes onto the internet and can be extended. And this is then used to manage, you know, very real-world scenarios. So, for example, we limit the top speed of all of our cars to 85 miles an hour. And you know, these cars are pretty fast. They can go about 150. And if you're renting it out to somebody, you just don't want people going that fast. So we can programmatically limit the top speed. And then Farmers Insurance can look at the speed in real time or, you know, after the fact and verify that no car has been faster than that, which lowers our insurance rates. And then a company like Goodyear, who's our tire service partner, can you know, grab data off the data bus, and they can look at the tire pressure, they can look at the mileage, they can look at the location, and this lets them decide when tires need to be rotated, when they need to be, you know, if there's some leak or something, when they need to be pumped up. And because they can be given the location, they can now schedule the truck to actually come out and address the tire issues. And then this is reshared with Farmers Insurance so that they can see that the tire pressure is back up to speed, and they're happier because now the risk is much lower in terms of accidents. So this really, we think, is a scenario that's in place today, and it's really kind of the way everything is inevitably going to head. And that's going to be not just you know, insurance and tire service, but also financing. So when you lease a car, typically there's a certain number of miles that you can run. And if you go over those miles, like now, usually you wait 3 years, and at the very end when you turn it in, they settle it up. But that puts risk on the financing company that you might be driving too much. So what we're going to do is give them real-time data so that they can actually charge you the right amount every month. And this is not only data that's shared, but it's the value. So if you want to pay $3 to get your tires inflated or $20 to get your tires rotated, this can now be handled on the tokenized bus where you know who's doing it, you have verification that it was done. Once it's done, it can be paid. It can be paid maybe by the insurance company that wants to keep risk low, or maybe by the car owners. So all of that can be worked out and mediated again on a tokenized blockchain. So then, this is all about just kind of fleet management, but the next thing that we think is we're just at the cusp of is the merging of private ownership and fleets. So right now, you buy a car and you drive it maybe a couple hours a day, so it's sitting around 22 hours a day, and it's not really in much use. But what the data feed lets us do now is to take all the data and figure out where the car is, figure out what type it is, how much electricity, how far can it go, when do you need it back, and then we can use it while you're not using it. We can unlock it, we can let somebody in, one of our drivers, maybe a rental person, and we can recapture the value of the sitting car. And since the miles on the electric car don't really depreciate it, it's almost a free use of the car. So what we're effectively doing is changing the model that like Uber has, which is a two-sided marketplace of passengers and then car owners who drive the cars, who clean the cars, who manage maintenance, who manage insurance, and splitting that off into a true multi-sided marketplace with kind of an economic mediation infrastructure, and that's the tokenization. So it's passengers, insurance. Different people can own cars versus drive cars versus clean cars, and this can all be done on a very granular basis. So the bottom line is going to be that what now costs $1,000 to buy a Tesla and have insurance and maintain it, and you just kind of use your car for 2 hours a day, is going to turn into $250 a month, where you not only get access to your car whenever you want, as much as you already use it, but every time you're in a new city, you can get access to Teslas. If you want to get driven, you can have somebody drive your car. You can get driven in another car, all on one unified platform that costs much less. And this is kind of an inevitable progression of what's the technology that Tesla is building and that will soon spread beyond them. So the value of this, we think, in the US, 17 million cars with 1,000 profit, that's about 100 billion in economic value. We think this is, with 2 million cars in a fleet, you have about $1 trillion of economic value for the tokenized network. So it's one of the very big markets, and unlike finance or energy, we think it's very standard, like kind of what you want to do in a car is the same here in London and Turkey, and so we think there can be a dominant platform that should be open source and it should be transparent. So that's what we're doing here, and if you're interested, just go to Tesloop.com, and we have programs where you can buy vehicles and put them on our network and get the economics that have never been available prior to now.